How's everyone doing today? Good. So my name is Mike Haydon. I'm going to tell you a bit of a story about myself and how I got involved in this industry. In 2012, I sold a business which we sold caravan and motorhome solar. So we're doing batteries and inverters and stuff for mainly four-wheel drives, what we're sort of specialising in. And back in 2012, I got a crazy offer to sell the business. So I decided to sell that business and had to go on gardening leave for 12 months, which basically means I couldn't compete in the industry or do anything. So in those 12 months I had off, my wife and I got married, and I thought, what is it I want to do in life? And in those 12 months, I decided to take my house off grid in the middle of Sydney. And I did it with a 12-volt solar system. So I pretty much took everything I knew from my caravan, motorhome, four-wheel drive sort of type scenario and learned it's all the same stuff, but just bigger for houses. So we took our house off grid in the middle of Sydney back in 2012. 13 is sort of when it all happened. And I wouldn't actually recommend anyone to do what we did now today. So I learned a lot of lessons with doing that there. And I think, this topic here for me today is to talk about solar on a budget. And it was one of those things that trying to learn and do everything myself cost me a lot of money and a lot of learning over the time. So that was that there. In 2016, my wife and I decided, we had a little boy and we decided to move to the country and we wanted to raise him in the country. So we moved to Lismore, the Northern Rivers. Everyone knows where that is? Yeah, heard about the floods? Yep, I had 2 metres of water through a flood-free business, so it wasn't fun. I threw a lot of lithium in the bin, so it wasn't a fun day that day for me. So in 2016, we moved to the Northern Rivers and it gave me my chance to take my second house off grid in town. And when we did our first house, we had a 3 kilowatt solar system, we had 12 kilowatt hours of battery storage, and we had gas cooking, and we had gas, hot water as a backup. When I did my second house, I wanted to basically do it all completely self-sufficient from energy, because my whole thing about being off-grid was never about trying to save money or trying to save the environment as much as, I do want to do, what I can to reduce my emissions and things like that. To me, it was all about being self-sufficient. And one of the big things for me for gas, and a lot of people do gas because it's a really easy way to save money, because we all love hot showers, yeah? Yep, and getting hot water off grid can actually be really expensive. So I really wanted to do my second house, do it all completely electric. So we put a 13 kilowatt solar system in with 12 kilowatt hours of battery storage. And that was a pretty cool system. So a bit of a story behind that one there. Once we'd done that house, and the way we did our house in Sydney, when we had flat batteries, my wife had to go downstairs, and I say my wife because she's normally one that experienced it most of the time, not me. I was always out, never at home when batteries went flat. She'd have to go downstairs and flick a switch and to go back to the grid to get backup power. Now, technology had changed so much in the time that we did it. And I was in Lismore, I was telling a customer saying, we've been off-grid for 6 months here in Lismore. My wife's like, no, we're not. We're not off-grid. I was like, we've been off-grid for like 6 months, babe. She's like, well, how come we don't have all those dramas and stuff that we had before? And I was like, well, I've learned a lot in the last 6 years. So, but the technology had also changed a lot in that time. So it made it a lot easier. So when our batteries went flat, the system went straight back to the grid, and you'd never know that literally you're living off-grid. So that was the thing for us. So then after we had that system installed, I actually went and brought an electric car. When I first did my house in Sydney to back up in Sydney, I actually had an electric motorcycle. So I'm mad about motorbikes, and it was really easy to run the motorbike off-grid. I used to get home of an afternoon, sort of 1:30, 2 o'clock, and does anyone here live off-grid? It's a few people. So yeah, do you know when your batteries get full and your solar panels turn off? So it's a big thing I get all the time. Customers call up and say, Mike, this solar system's great, but my panels are not working. They've just stopped working. And it's like, well, are your batteries full? Yep. Well, the solar's got nowhere to go for that energy, so it would turn off. So what I would do is of an afternoon, get home like 1:30, 2 o'clock, plug my motorbike in, and then my solar panels would turn back on and charge my electric motorbike up. Yeah? So if I didn't plug it back into another load, the solar system just wouldn't turn on unless I turn a big load back on. So the solar would just get wasted. So we did that. And so fast forward to, when we did our second edition of our house in the Northern Rivers, I brought an electric car. And to me, remember, my intention is always about being self-sufficient. That's what I've always wanted to do. And that's why a big thing for me with gas has always been finance, is how I think about it. You end up paying for it in the long run. So you're better off, my opinion on gas these days, if you can't afford to do off-grid properly and be completely self-sufficient, you're better off paying a finance company and getting finance, because it's cheaper in the long run to pay a finance company than pay a gas company for the rest of your life. Does that make sense? Yeah? And finance is pretty cheap these days, so it's pretty crazy. So when we got the electric car, we had to upgrade the system from a 13 kilowatt system to a 25 kilowatt system. And that basically made us self-sufficient for having the car. It was only about 3 months ago my wife was complaining, or it was probably a bit longer than that, it was about 6 months ago, we got our winter bill, and she wasn't happy. Because we are self-sufficient, we're off-grid, but we use the grid as our backup. So the grid's our generator, is how we use it. And my wife, who'd be unhappy here if they got a $100 electricity bill? Yeah? Sarah was like, babe, we got a $100 electricity bill. And we also changed companies. So she was more about, I don't like that company because you change companies and it's more expensive because we're with them. I was like, no, we don't have a 60 kilowatt solar system like we used to have when we had the office and we had the warehouse and all that stuff. And, I've had to move my whole business home to this 25 kilowatt solar system. So we are expecting a bit more from the solar system than we used to before when we lost the warehouse. So she wasn't happy with the $100 bill, but that's the first bill we've gotten in about 4 or 5 years. So anyway, she'll get over it. So I want to sort of share some stuff that I've learnt over the years about DIY and doing solar on a budget. And it's one of those things that who here is planning to go out and build their own solar system and really wants to do it all themselves? Yep, quite a few people here? Okay, cool. Look, one of the things I've learned over the years, and for me, when I took my house off grid, I ended up providing a service to people where I'd help people design solar systems, and then we'd go out and find installers to help build the solar systems and install them. We really struggled to find installers, so I really helped people do the whole DIY thing. And what I found with really trying to help people do DIY and do it themselves, people don't read instructions and people don't listen. So what happens when people don't listen and people don't read instructions? They blow things up. And normally it's always my fault because I supplied the system. So, it was my fault I didn't make them read the instructions. I do a lot of things by video, so I have a whole video education platform. And I'd always say to people like, oh, we blew this up and did this wrong. Did you watch my video? No, I didn't have time to do that. So, okay, cool. So DIY can actually cost you a lot more and be really expensive if you do it wrong. Does that make sense? I am a big fan of, you can get some really good second-hand Telstra batteries and lead-acid batteries and things like that. You can do it on a budget doing that. But what I'd highly recommend, if you're looking to do DIY, you see a lot of the guys around here. I'll just use the guys at Commodore over here as an example. Who's been to the Commodore stand? Yeah? You see those boxes? So I'll give you an example of those boxes and why they're really good. They're actually only an extra couple of $1,000s compared to doing it yourself. And the other thing for me, there's 2 things in my life I think the most important things that we all have the same of. Anyone want to take a guess? Time? Yep. Time and your attention. To me, they're the 2 most important things that we've all got. To give someone your attention, to give someone your time, the 2 most important things that we have. So doing it yourself, you can spend a lot of time trying to learn and, make a lot of mistakes. So what I've learned over the years and doing this stuff, the guys like with the Commodore boxes, those guys can save you a lot of time and money when they build the box and get it all done for you. And if you're going to want to try and save money doing that, you're better off paying a professional like that to build the box. It's an extra couple of $1,000s of what you'll work out that'll cost you. You'll also save a lot of time. The one thing with the boxes that really will help save money, do you guys have a lot of geckos down here? The geckos come down this far? In the northern rivers, we get a lot of geckos. So I've had a lot of customers over the year, they've done the DIY, they put this board in this big shed. It looks great, and then some little gecko comes along on the top of the inverter and decides, oh, this looks like a good toilet here. And they'll just do their business on top of the inverter, and all of a sudden you've lost a couple of $1,000s from an inverter, from a rodent getting inside of it. So getting the boxes from the guys like that, you can save, it's going to cost you an extra couple of $1,000s up front, but in the long run, and I'll just share this story with you. We had a customer 3 or 4 years ago. We used to build the boards and we used to do the same thing, put boards up and do that sort of stuff. And I made the commitment this year to go, right, we don't do boards anymore, we do boxes. And this customer, Tim, he'd referred me to this other customer, and I said to her, I don't sell boards anymore. I just sell the boxes. Everything has to come in a box. And she said, look, I just want the board, I want to save money. So anyway, Tim said to me, Mike, look, just supply me all the gear. We'll do it all. Give me the instructions like you did with me, and we'll put it all together. So anyway, we've shipped this system down to Tim. Tim's got it. We're talking through how to wire it up and do it all. And then anyway, he called me a couple of days later, and I thought he was calling about how to wire this system up. He said, mate, my inverter's dead. It just keeps going to overload. I said, pull the front of it off and tell me if there's any mice droppings or anything like that in it. So anyway, he pulled the front of it off. There was nothing inside except big corrosions down the boards. So he'd lost his inverter because, you know, someone had gone through and done their business and destroyed it in there. I'm someone trying to save money. So I'm a real big fan these days, and like that customer's just brought this new system. We're going to build a board right next to his place. It's very likely over the next few years she's going to spend the same money on getting that part replaced. Does that make sense? So it's really important because it's just cheap insurance. And like another thing with a lot of people that live off grid, who here has insurance off grid? Most people don't. So either spend the money on a box and get a professional to build it and put it in a box, because that will save you money in the long run, because it's cheap insurance because it stops the rodents getting inside the boxes, or have insurance because your solar system off grid is actually just covered under your home and contents insurance. And your insurance companies will replace things if rodents and stuff get in and damage it. Does that make sense? Over the years, the amount of customers I've had that have had systems, you know, the rodents got in there and destroyed it, and they've lost everything, and they had no insurances, so they've got to pay that $3,000 or $4,000. So it's really important to think about long-term off-grid, because what you're wanting to do, and especially the wasted embodied energy of losing that product, you want to be thinking about when you're installing a solar system or an off-grid system, unless you're using really cheap second-hand parts that you're getting and you're recovering and repurposing, if you're spending money and buying brand new stuff, you know, like this Victron gear, it's going to last you 20 years. Does that make sense? So you want to make sure that you're building things to a standard and spending that little bit extra money up front that's going to save you in the long term rather than a rodent come in and destroy something. Now, one thing I'm really a big fan of actually saving money and doing this DIY yourself is second-hand solar panels. One of the biggest problems I see with the grid-connected industry, and just to let you know, like, over the last 14 years of me doing this, I reckon I've sold 10 grid-connected solar systems. I just don't do it. We've never done it. I don't understand it. Everything we've always done is with batteries, because to me, all my customers and everything I've always done is about being self-sufficient, and, you know, feeding back to the grid in the middle of the day and then coming home and use them at night just doesn't do what I want to do. So we don't do grid-connected solar systems. We've always done batteries and off-grid. So one of the big problems with the industry, most people only sell a 5 kilowatt inverter with 6.6 kilowatts of panels, yeah? Everyone sort of heard those numbers? And it's a real big thing that's sold, and what happens is people put a solar system on a house, and normally it's too small. Once people go solar, who here's gone solar and regretted they didn't put a big enough system up? No one? Yeah? It is one of the best things to do when you go solar is just cover the roof. That's the rule. Yeah? Just fill your roof. You'll never be unhappy that you put too many solar panels up. I promise you that, you know? And it's the most expensive thing to add in the future. So to get to the second-hand solar panel, what happens is people put these 6.6 kilowatt solar systems up, and a lot of people sell houses or they realise it's not big enough, and then they want to go batteries and add things. And the reality is, and which sucks about the industry, it's actually cheaper and easier to rip the old system off and put a whole complete new system up. But that creates all this recycling. In South Australia, there's like 6 Super Bowl, like, you know, like the American Super Bowl football they play. There's like 6 stadiums full of solar panels that have been ripped off roofs that are ready for recycling. Now that's a great opportunity if you really want to save money going off grid DIY, do as much as yourself. You can buy one of these Commodore pre-made boxes and go source second-hand solar panels. Does that make sense? Because there's so many of it at the moment going on. They're ripping them off. And the other thing, they're about to introduce a law in Australia, which is a stupid law if you ask me. The installers, when they remove the system, have to get a bit of paper to say that they've dropped it off to a recycling facility. So we can't give it. When the floods are on, or more the fires, what we did with a lot of second-hand systems that we ripped off, we went and gave it to Blaze Aid. Did you guys have that down here? Yep. And they were amazing. The guys were putting them on people's sheds, and a lot of their older solar panels are made by Sharp, Hyundai, BP, a lot of these big companies that are really good names, and they're still great, still really good performance and things like that. So if you really want to try and save money, I'd highly recommend buy all the new gear and all the new equipment. And with batteries these days, one of the other things to save money on is the really good thing about lithium battery technology these days is you can actually add to it. So if you don't know what your energy usage is going to be, you can just buy 1 or 2 batteries and start off with 1 or 2 batteries. Because in the future, you can actually just literally, like the guys from Commodore, you could drive past the shop, say, hey, Matty, give me a battery, you take it home, you put it in, the plugs are already in the box, and you just clip it in, you call him up and say it's done. He'll take 2 minutes to change the settings in there, and it's all sorted out. Yeah? So you're better off to start with smaller batteries and more solar panels because you can actually add batteries in the future. And the really good thing about that, and I suppose when we did our house for the first time in 2012, 13, that was one of the big downsides with the batteries we used. We couldn't add to them. So we were stuck with those batteries for the rest of our lives until they died. Does that make sense? Where the technology these days, with the lithium-based batteries, you can just keep adding and growing your battery technology, which is great. Yeah, so has anyone any questions?
Hi. Is it true that solar panels have a certain lifespan, and how does second-hand work into that? Because I had heard, and I don't know a lot, this is new to me, that solar panels will only last so long, or their maximum effectiveness will only last so long.
Yep, it's a very good question, and I'll talk about solar panels and batteries. Most solar panels are rated to a 25-year performance warranty, and the reality is it's a waste of time and a waste of, don't even worry about it, forget it. If someone's telling you these have got a 25-year performance warranty, it's not worth the paper it's written on. Because if you to go and prove that 25% performance warranty, you're just not going to spend the money to do it, yeah? So what you want to do if you're going to buy a brand new panel, you want to see something that's got a 15 or a 25-year warranty, just think about whatever the smallest warranty is, just go with that one. But for the life expectancy, for the warranty periods, they advertise, like a lot of the better quality solar panels these days will say after 25 years, you'll have 90% usable capacity. Yeah? So they've lost like 10%. So if you've got a 10 kilowatt solar system or 10 kilowatts of solar panels on your roof, that means in 25 years, you're only going to have 90%, so 9 kilowatts usable power. So the easy way to fix that is whack an extra 2 or 3 solar panels up if you really need that extra power. Does that make sense? And batteries are the same these days. Like a lot of them warrant that at the end of their usable life, which is 10 years, they've only got 60% usable capacity or 70 or whatever the warranty period is. What you're better off doing is maybe halfway through 5 years or 6 years is buy another battery and just throw it in there and you'll get that capacity back. Does that make sense? So it's not that they're dead or they're going to stop working. They just don't perform as well. You know, like us as humans, the older we get, we just don't perform so well. So it's a bit like panels. And you just add an extra few and you're good to go.
But I wanted to ask about the batteries of the cars.
Yep. Yeah, so with lithium batteries, and for me, what got me really excited about getting involved into lithium, I do a lot of research on embodied energy. So to me, it's really important. All the products, when we used to sell products, I actually don't sell products anymore. So I don't have that business anymore. It's not what we do. So when we were selling products, one of the biggest things that concerned me about anything I was selling was the embodied energy. Yeah? So I want to know how much energy it took to make that product and how long it took to pay for itself back. I didn't really care about the financials. It was about the embodied energy. Now, solar panels, I love a brand called REC. They're made in Singapore. They have one of the lowest embodied energy solar panels on the market. So it's a really quick payback period from their embodied energy. So the energy it takes to make them, really quick payback period. Now, when it comes to batteries, in 2017, that's where the technology really changed and really shifted. Lithium batteries were a big thing. And it's something I stayed away from for a few years, and I wasn't really that confident. And then I wanted to get an electric car, because I had an electric motorbike, and I was like, well, you know what? I've got kids now, and I can't really throw my 2-year-old in the back of a motorbike. So I thought, yeah, I want to do this properly and drive around an electric car. So I looked into buying an electric car, and I thought, well, I really need to learn and understand lithium batteries. So the research I did, I looked into Tesla, and there was Teslas in America, because there's all this data's online, you can find it all. There was Teslas that done 1 million miles. So what's that, like 1.6 million kilometres, and the batteries had lost 10% degradation. So and these cars are like 3 to 5 years old. So you imagine, I just thought about, okay, that's a car, and that's a lot of charges, discharges, charges, discharges. I thought, well, in a home battery situation for that same sort of battery technology, and most of the cars use NMC, which is nickel, manganese, cobalt batteries, and they tend to lose a lot more capacity than the LiPo4s, which is what most people use in home, in off-grid solar batteries. So when I looked at that data, and I thought, shit, that's a lot of cycles every single day. And that's what sort of gave me the confidence to start trying to sell lithium batteries and put in the marketplace and offer that to customers, because I thought, well, and we just really don't know, because there really hasn't been that many people that are selling lithium batteries for that long to see how they're going to go. The one thing that the Tesla data I looked at that I don't really know yet is that life, the shelf life, you know. So cycle life, yeah, they've done good. They've lost hardly any capacity. And then the other side of that, there's loads of horror stories of batteries that have blown up, things that haven't lasted. And so, but the reality is there's more good stories out there than bad stories in lithium batteries is the reality, you know. So there's, in anything, you ever look into it, you always find the good and the bad, but there's more good stories out there. And that's the reality. We don't really hear good stories, do we? You know, because the media is always full of all the bad stories and all the Teslas that are caught on fire and all the off-grid solar systems that catch on fire, and don't buy that. So, but there's a lot more better stories out there than bad stories. So, does that answer your question? Yep, cool.
You mentioned buying second-hand solar panels.
Yep.
Is there any limitations there? So if you went, like, you had BP branded and you had 6 panels of them and then 10 panels of a different brand, different wattages, is there any limitations there? Or
Yep, 100% there is. So that's a really good question. So what the question is, like, pretty much can you mix and match different types of brands of solar panels? So forget about the brands, it's about the voltages. And just think about like this. So just say, for example, you go out and buy, you know, you've got 10 250 watt solar panels, and then they've got 2 300 watt solar panels. And you want to use all of them together. The way it works is if you've got 10 250 watts and you put those 2 300 watts in there, you've got 12 250 watt panels. Does that make sense? It'll always come down to the weakest link. So, you know, don't worry about that they're 50 watt more and you can't mix and match them. You just understand that, okay, well, I'm just going to lose 100 watts. And in the scheme of things, it's nothing. So, yeah. And a lot of installers will tell you that, and you can't mix and match and don't do it, and, you know, you're going to kill yourself and blow the house up and that sort of stuff, but you're just going to lose efficiency. And it's a, you know, any engineers here? Okay. 2? Okay, all right, I'll be nice. Any electricians? All right, here we go. No. But people do get so caught up with efficiencies, and like with efficiencies of solar panels, and you know, it's who's got the biggest, you know, whatever out in the marketplace. And all these solar panel companies think, oh, you know, we have the most efficient, the best panel, but that only really matters if you've got a small roof space. The efficiencies, if you've got a big paddock and a big roof space, who cares about the efficiencies, you know? But if you're in an urban environment, and that's for me, I love taking urban houses off grid. That's my favourite thing, because to me it's a real challenge. The reality is if you own property in the middle of nowhere, you just put them all on the ground, build a big ground mount, or put them on your shed, build a bigger shed. You don't, yeah, that's where efficiencies comes in with solar panels. And so many engineers, electricians and solar guys get so caught up in, mine's at 22% efficiency and yours is 21, so these are better, and, you know, but if you've got a big shed and you can fit 2 extra solar panels on, you're better off, you know, buying the cheaper panels that are not so efficient, because you put an extra 2 panels up, you're going to have a better situation anyway. Does that make sense? So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of efficiencies. And I did the numbers once on Fronius. Fronius, they've done a really good job at marketing to installers. And installers seem to love Fronius. I don't like them at all. And I'll just give you the reasons why. They've got a fan. So if you've got something that has a fan moving every single day, what's likely to happen to it over its lifetime? It's going to stop, it needs maintenance, it's going to cost you money. The other thing with Fronius, you need to register your warranty. So you get a 5-year warranty, you need to do some paperwork to get your 10, and then the second half of the warranty is not as good as the first half. But everyone goes out and sells with Fronius. It's like, but it's 98% efficient. All the cheap ones are 97% efficient. And I run the numbers once for someone, customer asked me, well, what is it over a period of time over the 10 years? I was like, I really don't know. And I worked out on a grid-connected solar system, the customer would save $300 from the efficiencies between a cheap Chinese one with a 10-year out-of-the-box warranty, parts and labour, compared to the Fronies where you have to do 20 things to make it happen. They would have saved $300, but they're paying an extra $1,000 for the Fronius. Does that make sense? So the efficiencies are, they're negligible. So, not really an issue.